And we will now move on to our next speaker. She has worked for 30 years with diverse team from SMEs and MNSCs and emerging mature indices in Asia Pacific markets. Throughout her corporate and consulting stints, she specialized in sales and business development, regional general management, learning and organizational development, management and leadership training, and executive coaching. She has certification which includes advanced certification in training and assessment by Singapore, WDA IAL, Certified Practicing Management Consultant of the Singapore Business Advisors and Consultant Council, and a sales management and leadership trainer and facilitator for global training partners like CCOS. She is a CEG Core Essentials graduate and a coaching clinic license facilitator awarded by the Corporate Coach U and is a practicing executive and corporate coach. Please all welcome the Managing Director, Senior Consultant, and Executive Coach of POWERinU, live from Singapore. May I call on Ms. Elaine Cercado.
Good
You're on mute.
afternoon. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Line. And thank you so much for inviting me for the SETC Online Training Summit. I'm very honored and joyful to be able to share with you on this very special topic, engaging, motivating, and leading today's workforce. And from a very technical to a very people-focused topic, I hope you're all ready for the next 45 minutes or so that we'll be talking about today's workforce. And with me in POWERinU are my co-director, June Marfori, and our marketing and business development consultant, Trina Gonzalez. So we're here to support and answer any queries you may have throughout the presentation and even after the presentation. And so what will we be covering today? And by the way, I've had a very long introduction from Line, but I'd like to also mention that my personal mission, which is very much aligned with our organizational mission, is to help you discover, develop, maximize, and share the power in you, your teams, and your organizations and businesses. And so what we'll be covering today, we will look into the why. Why do we have to look into this? Today's increasingly disengaged workforce are evident. Latest research and trends on employee engagement, which I will be showing to you, reveal that. And then second, we'll be looking into the how. How do we lead today's workforce? And I will be sharing two key frameworks, if you may, and this might not be new to some of you, but it could be a good refresher or updating as well. Motivation, based on The Inner Game by Tim Galway, and Emotional Intelligence by Daniel Goleman. And I will connect those with the research findings that I will be sharing with you about employee engagement, motivation, and leading today's workforce. And then the third aspect will be, what can we do? What can we do at the organizational, management, and personal levels? And there are two things that I will be recommending, such as improving employee experience in the organization and developing manager coach leaders. And so let me move forward. I hope, within the next 45 minutes, we can have an engaging, enriching, and fruitful discussion around those topics. So the why, why is it very relevant to look into the employee engagement, motivation, and leading of today's workforce? And before I proceed with the research findings, I'd like to also engage you and go into an app. I think some of you might be familiar with Slido. If you can just use your QR code or go to www.slido.com and key in 379481, that would be great. And I will be sharing shortly the app. So let me just open that. It's a simple app that you can get into without logging in. So hopefully you got the QR code and you got the number. All right. Just allow me a few seconds to just show you. And so the question that I'd like you to get into is, why are today's workforce disengaged? Can I just confirm that you can log into the Slido? All right. So we're seeing a few answers, actually at least one answer there now. And I'm seeing at least 2, 4, a few of you logged in already. Not logged in, but has access the app. So effects, as I see them, I will be reading them out. The effects of foreign culture, different cultures at the workforce. Millennials get bored easily. Millennials are easily demotivated. Yeah. So the rest are still testing. Toxic culture, generation gap, loss of interest with a job, new normal impact, the pandemic, LAU. And by LAU, perhaps you can just spell out just to make sure. You might have a generation gap. So I just need to make sure I understand what your LAU means here. I appreciate it. Lack of motivation, just don't care, no urgent needs to fulfill, multi-generational workforce gap. Purpose of company does not match the personal purpose. Effects of worldwide pandemic, yes, so related. The pandemic has come up a couple of times. Health and finance problems, so personal problems, communication gap, pandemic again, probably from the root. And this is a bit profound. Perhaps later on we can have this specified. Lack of interest, lack of transparency, new normal impact, again, relating to the pandemic, too much distraction. So probably from the digital world that we live in, where there are a lot of digital noises, lack of motivation, FOMO, YOLO. Okay, so FOMO is the fear of missing out. YOLO is, can you just put that in the chat box or in the polling? Again, the pandemic, the fear, the toxic mindset has come up. Okay, so thank you so much. Thank you for your participation here. I don't see you, and that's always one of the difficulties, but in virtual training. But I can see that you're very active, in putting in your thoughts, and in fact, you should be able to scroll through all of this. So if I can just continue, younger workforce looking for alignment, offer from another company, social media, lack of focus, too much workload, YOLO, you only live once. Thank you. Difference in perspective, loss of passion to work. Given the environment, and then work are more on the virtual, so less personal interactions. Thank you so much for all of this. And in fact, what we will do is share all the outputs to, of course, the organizer line, and this is also this can be part of your data gathering in terms of the group, that you can use for future. Now let me go back, and later on we will have 2 more Slido. We'll get back to it, so don't get out of the app. And what I will be doing is go back now, switch back to my PowerPoint. Okay, so we've seen that, there's a lot of reasons that you have mentioned that disengages the workforce. But let me show to you what researchers have shown us. And I will be quoting from 2 recent research papers who are well established in employee engagement and in employee experience. Okay, and this were research has done in the last 2 years, so covering from 2019, 2020 to 2021. Um, a disengaged workforce, you may ask, what is the current rate of disengaged workforce? I would ask you and just type in the chat box any guess, in terms of percentage, if we were to move from 0 to 100% at a global level. Any guess? Perhaps you can use a chat box. On the average, the global level, this is a research done globally. Of course, there are just select countries and regions done, but at least in Asia, there were a few Asian countries covered. 50, 70, 65, 70, 67, very close. It's 71%. More people are disengaged in 2021 than in 2020. Actually, to be very exact, based on Achievers Engagement and Retention Report, it's 14% in 2020, 24% 2021. That 71% is the deterioration in engagement level. So quite alarming, considering now that in 2020, of course, the pandemic was at its peak, but then of course there were many other factors or events that have happened after that. And when we look at what is actually hindering the engagement at work, this was what came out. So we have the lack of career growth as still the number one factor holding back engagement. And then there's a feeling of being unappreciated for the contribution. Relationship with manager comes in as well at 15%. Leadership management not listening or acting on my feedback is also at 11%. And lastly, lack of trust in the leadership at 10%. Okay, so these are some of the you could say are strong possible reasons for disengagement. And there are many other researches that actually collaborate or substantiate these percentages. It may vary from company to company, but you would see that these are more or less the trends, beginning from the last couple of years, when the pandemic hit the world. And of course, some of these are not new. You will see that, lack of career growth has been around for some time. But the new situation, the new normal that we have has probably made this even, or underlined this, has highlighted this. Now, what influenced engagement the most? So the reverse is the other, on the other side. What has made engagement very, very high? So can I also ask you to put that in the chat box, if you could think of, okay, so organizations who are very engaged, what is that key thing that they have? So the question is, what influenced engagement the most? Anyone who'd like to just try on the chat box? I'll pause. Rewards, great place to work, management care, benefits. So I'm seeing benefits a few times, work-life balance, being accepted, inclusion. Very good. Thank you so much. All of this, yes, are influencing engagement. Let me show you what is the top. According to the study, 92% said sense of belonging, which is kind of similar to what, let me just go back to one of those, inclusion, being accepted, right? So 92% of those who are very engaged have strong or very strong sense of belonging. And what are the others? So you have mentioned, actually, all of those things that you have written on the chat box are also included in what influences engagement. And so let me show this to you. And I'll show them all. So enduring engagement drivers such as listening and feeling supported have remained stable during the upheavals of 2020. But we have also seen some major shifts in what powers engagement. Decades of research showed that drivers like confidence in senior leadership and opportunities for learning and development are key drivers as well for employee engagement. But in the midst of the global pandemic and other, problems that the globe had been experiencing, concerns about environmental and ethical practices has really reignited, discussions around ethics, around environment concerns. And you could see that here, the corporate social responsibility, the question of, are you proud of your company's efforts to have a positive impact on the world, is now also a big bubble there. So it has even reignited discussions around diversity, equity, and inclusion. So new drivers have emerged and soared straight to the top of what influences employee engagement. Now, what are driving or not driving engagement? So let me show some of these statistics and just briefly go through each one of these drivers or not drivers of engagement. I think somebody mentioned earlier about this, right? Better opportunities outside. 52% are looking for a new job, and key reasons are work-life balance and recognition. And so part of the second or third topic would be really talking about that, about building a culture of recognition. And part of that as well is, of course, looking into the emotional and total well-being of employees, because that is part of the work-life balance. Number two, improving employee engagement relied on more than the fun perks, more than ping pong or more than providing some of the fun benefits. It's got to do really with culture. 66% said company culture has to be improved. And so when you talk about culture, there's a lot, that we can talk about. That's probably something Line and the group can actually look into in terms of possible topics into the future, because culture, building a high-performing culture, building a culture that captures the values, of course, of the workforce that you're targeting, is something that really needs a lot of other discussions and actions altogether. And then manager recognition drives employee engagement. So as I mentioned, building that culture of recognition is very important. There are those who said, and 34% at that they don't feel valued, and 43% are Gen Z. They feel that they are not valued. They are among the generations, they most likely not feel valued. Employers ask for feedback, but many don't act on them. And there is what we call inaction fatigue. I don't think companies have, especially the big and global companies, even the very small, progressive, small to medium enterprises, progressive at that, have not gotten feedback from their employees. I believe the last 2 years have really forced companies to talk, to communicate, to get feedback from their employees. However, the one that is not driving engagement is the inaction. There's inaction fatigue, as the survey said that only 16% of employers take action on their feedback. And sometimes, this is really a communication strategy that companies can look into. Now, the others are remote work fueling employee stress about productivity doubts. 44% said they worry their managers doubt their productivity, because almost everybody went to remote work. And with the remote work, it is something new. Measures might not be in place. Not all people are equipped. And so the remote work has really put pressures on some of the workforce, or even maybe even majority of the workforce. And so in terms of really being productive, that was something that we all had to adapt to. And what really caused the stress as well for the employees rather, is that their supervisors or managers doubted or doubt their productivity, while working remotely. And so they tend to, and this is very much related to work-life balance. So they tend to log in earlier and stay online later. Okay, because that, as we said, the boundaries between personal and professional have blurred, so everyone tends to log in the whole day, so the work-life balance is really felt, the anxiety is felt, and so that worry is adding stress. And then lastly is that employees don't feel connected to their company. 46% feel less connected, and 46, and then 42% say company culture has diminished mainly due to lack of communication. Okay, so again, very important, the culture, the sense of belonging. So it's related to that, and the communication again is a very much critical piece of that. So what is the impact to the managers? Let me read this. It says, managers continue to play a pivotal role in organizations. This was especially the case during the pandemic, where the role of managers became even more critical to supporting and helping their team members adapt quickly and overcome challenges. As a champion for their employees, managers help people understand the connection from their work to the company's strategy, build connections to others in the organization, and recent data also suggests impacts directly on employee belonging. So going back to that cost of disengagement, which we said, or which I showed you, was sense of belonging, managers can actually directly impact employee sense of belonging. This is what it's saying. Qualtrics is one of the experts for employee experience, and they shared their survey, their white paper on this. And so there are two things that employers, or managers, actually, the supervisors and managers can do to cultivate that sense of belonging. So number one is the feeling that the employee is supported in being able to adapt to organizational changes. As we all know and have accepted, the changes will not end, right? We live in a VUCA world, and if there's something that's constant, that's going to be changed. And so we all have to, as they say, we all have to learn to surf through the waves of changes, because the waves will not stop. It will continue. And so employees now have to be supported in being able to adapt to organizational changes. Number two is to make the employees feel valued as part of the team, and to have open communication. And so related to that is later on, we'll go into emotional intelligence. Why? Because in emotional intelligence, empathy, listening, communication are hallmarks of emotional intelligence. And so feeling valued, very important. Communication, very important. So both qualities can that managers can embody in their behavior and reward in their teams. Okay, so that is the role that managers have, which I believe many of you play a role in your organizations, whether it be managing teams, and managing businesses or departments. And so that ends that first part of that presentation, in terms of just sharing with you the challenges that we have today in leading, in engaging, in motivating our workforce. Now we will go into leading today's workforce. And so I will go through two frameworks that may help. And of course, I'll given the limited time, we'll only touch on the surface. There will be a few details that I'll be sharing in each framework, but of course we can continue discussions even after this presentation. One is motivation based on the inner game of Team Galway, and second is emotional intelligence by, probably because he's considered the father of emotional intelligence, Daniel Goleman. But before we go into the next one, I said we will try to engage you again. What engages and motivates your workforce today? And again, click on that. But let me just also go into the Slido. Let me just pull it out. And so what you'll see now here is a word cloud. Okay, I might not be showing it right now, so let me just show it. All right, so I think you should be able to see. And so I request that you, again, go back to Slido. You have the QR code. You have slido.com number 3794881. And we'll just create a word cloud, and see amongst us here in this Training Online Summit, what are the things that engage and motivate your workforce today? You can enter as many, by the way, this is multiple, but of course, let's give chance to others as well. So being recognized, that comes big, alignment of personal values, good working environment, feeling appreciated, empathy, open communication, appreciation, feedback, good pay with exclamation point. Personal time is respected, eagerness to learn, antigen testing and contact tracing, rewards and recognition, good company benefits amidst pandemic. Again, this is something that, of course, we will share with the organizers as part of the outputs of this. Happy work environment comes also big there. Promising career path, surviving the dailiness, benefit, salary, rewards and recognition, inclusion, work-life balance, sense of belonging, good working conditions. So keep it going. This is open. Both the previous question and this question is open, and we will have a third word cloud. We will ask that later on. I believe everything that the research, and I hope it's not because you were influenced by the research that I showed you, but hopefully these are things that you are facing on a day-to-day basis, things that you see, that you feel, you experience at the workplace. And so thank you so much again for contributing to this, and I believe whatever we have prepared today is very much aligned to what you are experiencing or what you have inputted here as the things that engage and motivate your workforce today. So thank you. And I'll just go back now to my, but keep it going. But I will just be switching back to my PowerPoint at this point. And so what engages and motivates your workforce today? You have said that, earlier, but let me tell you and go back to that study as to what they use as measure for engagement. So number one is the discretionary effort, the desire to go above and beyond, what is expected. Okay, so that is, when when you have somebody who's highly performing, that person is highly engaged. But of course, aside from the performance, is really that, like what you have said there, the alignment of values. There's passion. There's joy in working, because that is the next one. There's pride. There's joy, pride, in the work and the environment. There's advocacy for the organization. There's feeling of accomplishment from work, and there's intention to stay. Okay, so that begs the question of how can we then achieve all this, right? Because that's how we can motivate, we can engage, and we can ensure that our employees remain with us. And so I will go now into the inner game. And there is an accompanying video actually that unfortunately, due to lack of time, I will not be able to show here. But when I send out the materials after this, I will include the link for that video of the inner game, which I think will be also a much more detailed explanation of the inner game. But this is based on the model of Team Galloway, and Team Galloway is one of the fathers of coaching, and he said that building and sustaining performance is motivated by a combination of learning, enjoyment, and achievement. So all of this, all these three will help sustain the performance. It's important to sustain, it's important, of course, that we have high performing culture, and that high performing culture is of course sustained. And so it's important to know what are ways that we can sustain that performance. And so the model of Team Galloway seems simple, but in implementing it is not. It can be actually very complicated and can have many challenges when we try to incorporate all of this achievement, enjoyment, and learning. Let me go into a bit more detail as well. So he mentioned in Team's word that you can achieve peak performance when you let your potential come out and grow by removing interferences and overcoming self-doubts and anxieties. And as we all know, there are so many anxieties, that we are experiencing, be it mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, But to be very quantitative about this or technical about this, performance equals potential minus interferences. And so as managers, as leaders, what we can do and help or support our employees or teams is to remove as much the interferences so that the peak performance will come out. And there has to be the balance of the inner game and the outer game. Inner game are those, of course, that are inherent, that are subconscious sometimes, with us. And the outer game is, of course, everything that are external, the environment that we live in, be it in the office, at home, or in the bigger world. And there are three ways here that we can achieve peak performance, as Team Galloway has suggested. And this is particularly for those who are managing teams, who are managing, departments, and those who have or who work closely with different people, be it internal or external. Number one is be non-judgmental, so stay neutral. And that's why for coaches, and by coaches, it doesn't only mean professional coaches like us, but it can be coaches such as yourselves, if you're managers, or if you are a peer coach, so you can actually be non-judgmental, stay neutral. Number two, have a clear goal and have clear choices or options outlined. And third, act the part, so demonstrate self-trust. So have that confidence, trust your instinct. That's what he's saying. And so Team Galloway actually started as a tennis coach. From being a tennis coach, he then, so he was teaching students, of course, in tennis. From there, he wrote a book, The Inner Game, and then he became a popular, resource for coaching. So what he's saying is that one example here is, it's just a simple common example. When the tennis ball, so the way that he would that he would coach his tennis students was that when a tennis ball would hit the net, he wouldn't say that's a bad shot, you know. So he would just, to stay neutral, he would just say the observation, the concrete observation. The tennis ball has hit the net instead of that's a bad shot, you know, that's not a good shot or that's a bad shot, you know. So that is one example of how he's saying to stay neutral. And that can open up more in terms of communication. That can make the people open up. And of course, coupled with listening, the communication between the manager and the employee can actually start. You know, that is a good starting point. And then have a clear goal and choice. So have that vision. So very important would, of course, be envisioning where that ball goes, right? For those who are tennis players and, you know, just recently, of course, the U.S. Tennis Open really was sensational, you know, with the teenagers who won. You know, so it's probably something that's very fresh amongst those who play tennis. But you envision, right, where the ball would go. And so you have to be very clear about that. You have to have that vision. And I'm sure those who are into change management knows this, you know, so you need to have very clear vision from A to B, where you're going, what is that vision. And then third part is acting the part, having that confidence. And so even if you are not, or I'm not a tennis player yet, even if I'm just learning, I will act the part. I will prepare myself. I will play my best. I will act like I'm already a very good tennis player. You know, so that builds the confidence. And that's, of course, it takes time, but from there, I will trust myself. You know, so this can actually apply not just for managers, but in fact, for individual contributors, you know, for those who may not be leading teams, managing teams, or those who are working closely, you know, with different team members, external, internal, all of these are actually very helpful for achieving peak performance. And the last part is really learning. You know, it is very important that learning is fun. You know, and that's why we virtual in the virtual environment is very difficult to do it, but we try to just incorporate some fun stuff from time to time. You know, we will have games, we'll have quizzes, we'll have some activities that will really be more fun, you know, for everyone. Because when it's fun, the learning is more absorbed, it's retained. You know, so and of course, then you get to practice it, and the more you practice, then the more that learning becomes embedded into your nature. Okay, so that sustains performance. Now, let me go, conscious of the time, I will go into the next framework that I will share, you know, from Team Galway's inner game. I will go into emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence, you've probably been practicing this. This is not new. This is something that everyone probably has heard or has been practicing, maybe not formally, maybe unconsciously, but it is something that everyone probably has been doing. You know, so Daniel Goleman, in his book, Working with Emotional Intelligence, said, the rules of work are changing. We are being judged by a new yardstick, not just by how smart we are or by our training and expertise, but also by how well we handle ourselves and each other. And so this text that I highlighted or made it bold is essentially what emotional intelligence is all about, right? How well we handle ourselves and each other. And Daniel Goleman, you know, when he was starting actually, and when he wrote his book, he surveyed 200 CEOs in the world. And when they ask the CEO, when he asked the CEO or his company asked the CEO, they ask about the key qualities they have as CEOs. And it turned out that it's not their business acumen, it's not their technical competence, it's not those qualities that you might think would be very important, you know, for the CEOs. Of course, they are important, but they are not like in the top. What emerged as a top was, or as a differentiator for them to become CEOs, were emotional intelligence. And so it's very important that as managers, as leaders, to be able to engage, motivate, and lead our teams, that we should demonstrate emotional intelligence. And just to also quote another, other gurus in emotional intelligence, other than Daniel Goleman, Feldman and Mule said, emotional intelligence is using your emotions intelligently to gain the performance you wish to see within yourself and to achieve interpersonal effectiveness with others. Okay, so I bold there, to achieve interpersonal effectiveness with others. And to be able to do that, of course, it starts with self, right? So we need to be able to be clear about what we want to communicate, and from there be able to connect, to relate, to communicate with others. Okay, so it's very important that this, again, emotional intelligence is a key part, a key quality for leaders to be able to lead and manage others. And going back to Daniel Goleman, he actually made the 4 domains very important. Which areas do we need to build? Do we need to develop to be emotionally intelligent? So the first is self-awareness. Self-awareness, which is recognizing your feelings and behavior. Self-management, which is managing your feelings and behaviors and staying motivated in spite of setbacks and obstacles. So this is somehow related to resilience, which is another big topic, right? This two years during the pandemic, resilience, which not all generations might have, So I could say, I come from Gen X. Many of the Gen X actually display resilience, right? So for those who are Gen X there, say yes if you are Gen X. But I'm sure, everyone now is exposed to the new environment. Everyone now is living the new normal, and resilience is something that we need to have. Self-management has got to do as well with self-regulation, self-control. All of this are interrelated. Self-awareness and self-management are very important for us to be able to go to the 2 other dimensions. The 2 other dimensions are social awareness and relationship management. So social awareness is understanding what others feel, and relationship management is building rapport and collaborating with others. And so you could see here, the 4 dimensions of emotional intelligence are very, very important to be able to motivate, to engage, to lead today's workforce. And so if I were to just put that in a quadrant, this is how it will look like, So to be able to, in a personal competence, to be able to recognize and regulate ourselves, recognize or be aware of ourselves, so we need to have the self-awareness and the self-management. On the social, which is the others, then we need to have the social awareness and the relationship management. So you might ask, Elaine, what are this? What are the competencies in the self-awareness? What are the competencies? Can you be more specific? What are the behaviors that I need to improve? So of course I will go into more of those details. You might be overwhelmed. I will share 18 competencies of EI. I call them EI, emotional intelligence. Okay, so I will just show a quadrant by quadrant. Personal competencies will include emotional self-awareness, accurate self-awareness, because we have a sense of ourselves, but is it grounded, on the reality? Because sometimes our perceptions versus the perceptions of others might be different, so there has to be some checking, the self-assessment, as well as getting feedback from others. Self-confidence is part of that as well. On the social competence, empathy, organizational awareness, service orientation, very important. Self-management would include emotional self-control, transparency, adaptability. We were talking about change, achievement orientation, initiative, optimism. And lastly, on relationship management, inspirational leadership, influencing others, developing others, being a change catalyst, conflict management, teamwork, and collaboration. As a start, what I can do when I send out the deck is also share at least a self-assessment for the 4 domains. I don't have a free assessment that I can send out through line for the 18 competencies, but I can have one that actually measures for, in fact, 5 dimensions as per Daniel Goleman's model. And I think that's a good start. If you are willing to take this through, to do a self-assessment of the 4 to 5 core dimensions of emotional intelligence. It's a self-assessment, and so of course it's only yourself who can see it, but it gives you a good baselining of your emotional intelligence if it is something that you haven't done. Now, the good news is that, so it may sound a lot, but the good news is that when you can define something behaviorally, then you can develop it. Emotional intelligence is not inborn. It is something definitely that all of us can develop. All right, so let me end there and link emotional intelligence to leadership. Okay, so because you might ask, what's got to do with leadership, with managing the workforce, with leading the workforce, with engaging and motivating the workforce? Well, there's a very strong link, so there is what we call our brain is an open loop, right? So we're influenced. What does this mean? We rely on connections with other people for our emotional stability. The brain's limbic system, its emotional center, is an open loop system which relies on connections with other people to determine our mood, and that mood, of course, can set the tone for the day, for our work, for the week, for the month. So emotions are contagious. The more positive people's overall mood, the more they will cooperate and the better the results. And that's why one of the big things that came out in the slide was a happy environment. And so this is the reason a leader's emotional intelligence matters so much, and lies, it is something that we can control actually. And that's why, there's a self-regulation, the self-awareness, and all this in the dimensions of EI, okay? But it is definitely so much as well into the dimensions with others, so we have to make sure that, we are relating with others positively in a way. And let me test that now, So how many smiling faces do you see? And unfortunately, I cannot see all of you in the video. I can only see myself at the moment. But what's your count in terms of smiling faces? And hopefully, some of you back there are also smiling. So there's no answer in the chat box, but there's 23, correct? Thank you. There's 23, but then there's me as well. And there's probably a couple of you, or maybe how many of us right now? I'm just seeing how many of us, So there's 123 attendees and 7 presenters. So hopefully, out of the 123, there are some of you who are also smiling as you were looking at the smiling faces, or as you're looking at some of the materials that we have and probably smiling. Okay, so you're right, it should be everyone actually, because the point is emotions are contagious. And if you're not smiling, there's probably something stressing you right now in your immediate environment, or something in your mind that is not contributing to the positive mood. But the best thing about emotional intelligence is actually it helps you, or as a leader, as a manager, it helps you figure ways to drive other people's emotions in a positive direction. As this quote says, the best leaders are not just motivational, they're motivational. The primary task of all effective leadership in organizations is to figure out ways to drive other people's emotions in a positive direction. There is a concept of resonance. And when we say resonance, what is resonant leadership? Resonance is a reservoir of positivities that frees the best in people. When you feel happy, when you feel positive, you do more. You remove that interference that Tim Galloway said, and it brings out the peak performance of people. And so as managers, as leaders, we can definitely do something about that. And the last thing I will just share here, I know I've shared a lot of statistics, but there is just one last thing that I'd like to share. And this is from one of our partners in POWERinU. And his name is Jeremy Blaine. Together with Paul Marks, they actually came out with a survey about the Enlightened leader. And they interviewed leaders as well as employees. And the question were focused on the top 10 most important leadership traits for the next decade. And so if you look at it, again, nothing new. They're probably the same as other lists. But what's good about this survey is that it matches what leaders think and what employees think, and there are actually a lot of similarities in the top 5, so you're talking of being more empowering, being more engaging, having emotional intelligence, being a communicator, being a collaborator, at least in the top 5, if I were just to read the top 5. And then when you match that with the employee responses, being empathetic, being empowering as well, having relationship building skills, having engaging personalities, having emotional intelligence, so these are what the employees would like to see from leaders, so what are the important leadership traits for the next decade? And they surveyed around 4 regions, including Asia Pacific countries, around 1,877. This was only done early this year, and we personally have collaborated with Jeremy Blaine, and his research is very insightful. Again, this is something that I can share in terms of the link to the organizer, such that you can have a look in closer regarding the survey and the recommended steps there. And so as a last part, I would like to just quickly also mention about specific things that we can do, as at the organizational, manager, and personal levels. And so these are focused on 2 things: employee experience and developing manager, coach, leaders. Okay, so when we say employee experience, and you probably have many initiatives already on employee experience. Okay, so I won't go into a lot of details, but let me just highlight 4 key areas that are very important for establishing and sustaining employee experience in today's new normal. Okay, so firstly is on the employee well-being. I think we already mentioned, we saw that there's a lot of things now affecting us mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, so it is very important to really look into the total well-being of the employees. And I'm sure you are, but if there is one aspect that you are still missing, it would be very good to look into that. And in fact, the survey done earlier, we talked about 2-3 surveys done. When you say employee well-being, key questions that have come up are you feeling calm at work? Are you feeling energized at work? Are you feeling overwhelmed by responsibilities at work? Are you feeling positive about yourself at work? Do you have trusting relationships at work? Do you have work-life balance? These are some of the things that need to be addressed, that need to be answered. And of course, a survey is a starting point, but the actions are more important. Taking action on the feedback. So we've already talked about that. So if there are feedback you've gathered, and I'm sure you've gathered, but if there is something critical that has come out in the feedback that has not been addressed, it is very important to get into them now, to sustain that engagement among your employees. The third is manager effectiveness. And by manager effectiveness, we already talked about being engaged, being emotionally intelligent, bringing out that high-performing culture, being resilient, answering that sense of belongingness, which came out as #1 reason. It's a key driver for employee experience and building a culture of recognition. So recognition, of course, recognition, there are many things, platforms, tools that can be used. Of course, there are the quantitative ones, more into the rewards. There are also the non-quantitative, and sometimes a simple thank you can go a long way. Communication, having that avenue to talk, to communicate, and that, again, going back to that sense of belonging is very important. And so as a last slide, though, I'd like to just ask you to again go back to this slide, though, the third one. Okay, so the last one. And let me also open it up. The question is, what comes to mind when we say manager, coach, leaders? Because I would just like to spend about 2 or 3 slides to talk about being manager, coaching, leaders. And let me share that now. Okay. Friendly, motherly, no temper, no angst. Being able to influence, a leader who listens and guides his, her subordinate. Good communication. Motivator, walking the talk, guiding, coaching leader. Friendly, motherly, I've read that. A big word, motivator. Okay. Hands-on, a leader who listens. Okay. Encouraging, mentor. Okay. So what stands out is listening, guiding, right? Motivating, mentoring, God-fearing, selfless, egoless is another word for it. Empowering, like a parent with integrity, coaching, team player, easy to approach, no judgment. Direction setter. All right, we've gathered about 31. So, by the way, between mentoring and coaching, there's a slight difference. In as much as coaching is different from counseling, from training. So again, those are some of the things that for another discussion, for another webinar, but there are many resources about that as well available. And of course, we do have resources as well, free webinars that we've given around coaching. Now, thank you so much for those who have participated here. And it gives us a good sense of what are the different aspects of being a manager, coaching, leader. A manager is very focused, sometimes can be very focused on the tasks, on the processes. And as a leader, especially a coaching leader, the focus really is on the people. On the performance of the people, on the development of the people. And there is what we call a coaching leadership style that can really empower, that can help the person develop, and again, eliminate those interferences so that the peak performance can be achieved. And so thank you so much for all those who have, again, this is something we will share with the organizer. Let me just go back now to our last two slides. I probably just have a few more minutes left. So why is leader coaching very important? And I'm a certified coach, which is an ICF accredited institution. And we have, Coach Shu have actually made a lot of research about this. And also there are companies like Gallup and other consultancies who have actually done research about the value or importance of having coaching leaders. How long an employee stays at a company and how productive she is there is determined by her relationship with her immediate supervisor. And this is supported by all the other researches that we have shown earlier. Another that says here, the number one reason people quit their jobs is dissatisfaction with their supervisors, not their paycheck. Now, you might say that has changed. Yes, it has changed a bit because of the pandemic. This is not as recent. These statistics or findings are not as recent as the first one that I showed you in the first part. But nonetheless, they are very important. They are very important reasons for people to be disengaged, to leave companies, as you have seen, in some of the statistics about employee experience or employee engagement. And so let me share with you some of the studies about coaching, why it is very important for managers and leaders to be able to coach their people, and by coaching the proper way, so because coaching sometimes is a word that might not really be that might be misinterpreted and might not really be achieving the objective or the purpose of coaching. So employees who are coached to performance rather than managed to performance are more committed to and invested in the outcomes of their work. So those who are more empowered, those whose abilities are not interfered with, those who are coached to performance, as it says here, they are more engaged and they tend to stay longer in the company. Okay. Second one is that it creates a safe environment for one to be heard, understood, respected, and appreciated. So this stimulates inspiration, ownership, creativity, and innovation, right? So which is win-win for all. Building a coaching culture might not be that easy because each company has its culture. But once you're able to build it successfully, then this is one of the big benefits. And then third is that career self-reliance is a critical employee competency in which employee trade skills and contribution for development and opportunity. And managers must coach their employees as they become career self-reliance and engage in continuous career development. You saw that. You saw in the statistics I showed you earlier that in fact, the number one key driver right now for today's workforce, that survey was done only late last year, beginning of this year, right? So one of the key contributors of this engagement is career growth, so this is very important. And that ends it actually in terms of what we have covered, so we have covered the why, the how, and the what we can do. And of course, I'm here, my teammates, my colleagues are here, June Marfori and Trina Gonzalez, and we'll be sharing the materials as well. We are ready to answer any questions that you might have. By the way, this is my contact. Let me just show it. Feel free to connect with me at Elaine Cercado at POWERinU.com.sg. I'm also in LinkedIn. And of course, we have our website, POWERinU.com.ph. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the engaging presentation, Ms. Elaine, and also to POWERinU. The floor is now open for Q&A. You may begin to send questions to our trainer via chat box. You can also raise your hand so we can give you the spotlight and unmute you. I think we have coming questions here, so let me read it. Intelligence and training has numbers. How can we measure EI of managers and of subordinates?
Okay, well, emotional intelligence, there are surveys, assessments that can be done. One could be the self-assessment that I talked about, which I will share with you, Line. Actually, as I mentioned to you, we will be sharing some of these, tools that you can use. The second would be really more of a survey, not just, like 360-degree kind of survey, because it is very important to get the feedback from others. And of course, there are a lot of research that goes into coming up with the survey, the assessments. There are a few assessment tools available in the market, and we can talk about that, should you be interested. But there are definitely many assessment tools available, automated with, uh, each with its own methodology and reporting. The best, but
Thank you
sorry,
so
yeah, let me just answer one quick. If you are not ready to invest in it, one of the best ways really is to have 360-degree kind of feedback, the traditional way. Yeah, I mean, just asking feedback amongst everyone, be it your peer, your manager, your direct reports, your customers, and other stakeholders.
Thank you so much, Ms. Elaine. We will definitely share it with our participants. And for the next question, is adversity intelligence a subset of EI, or is it a different trait a leader must have?
There is a different formula for adversity, but I don't have that at the moment. We do have another resource who is more into adversity quotient. So if you are very interested in adversity quotient, it is something, of course, that we can share more with you. But to answer directly the question, yes, there are some qualities in adversity quotient, like overcoming challenges, being resilient, all of this, that are part of EI, but there is another measure used to really, if you want to go into the science, in the same way that we have the science of emotional intelligence, we have the science of adversity quotient as well. And again, there are assessment tools that are available for adversity quotient.
Thank you so much, Ms. Elaine. Let's see if we have still questions, or also
There
do you
is,
have
if I may read, Line, there's a comment from my co-director from POWERinU, June Marfori. So if I can just read it for you, June. Typically, employee pulse surveys can also yield engagement levels of the employees, as these can measure the level of empathy and concern of the people leaders, which effectively can show how people-centric the leaders are and more like coaches in their approach to leading teams. And if I may add to that, it reminded me as well of new tools available in the markets, which are about measuring culture. There are now high-performing culture indices, that are available, assessment tools that can help the company really build a baseline for the organizational culture, which are aligned to the organizational values. So all of these are now available in the market, because more increasingly, with as you saw in the study, culture is very much a key or a critical factor for engagement.
Thank you, Ms. Elaine. Just I think for the interest of time, last words, Ms. Elaine, that you could give to our audience.
Well, thank you so much again for this opportunity to present. And there's a lot that I shared, and some of them fast. But of course, we're always open for any further discussion. And again, you can reach me through line, or as I've shown to you, and we'll share some of the materials and tools. We're ready to support any of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Elaine.